I'm going to go over the testing framework for the class. Note that I have two groups. I have a professor group and a student group. In the very first step over on the left, the professor would create the repository. This will eventually hold the test and the starter code. The very next step would be to clone the repository down to your local environment, create the test and starter code, and then when that was ready, it would push it back to GitHub. At that point, that repository and all of that code, the starter code, the test, etc., are open to the world, and then the students could commence their workflow. At that point, they would fork that repository over to their GitHub account. They would clone that down to their local environment, create solutions locally, and when they felt that they were done or they simply wanted to save their work, they would push back into GitHub. At the very end, they would submit a pull request, which would pull it back into the repository of the student, or a request to pull back into the repository of the professor, and that would allow us to see her results, his or her results. Now I'm going to go ahead and show you a repository that we're going to use for this little demo. And as you can see here, I have a repository that does some basic testing. I have a number of files and I have a test that I've defined. This is being done with Mocha Chai testing framework. I'm going to go back to where I was and go back to the slides. This is simply a blow up of the student framework or their workflow. And I'm going to show you what happens once that pull request or that submit is done. I'm going to go ahead and walk you through this. The very first step is that a webhook with the information for the repository is sent to Travis CI, which is a continuous integration framework pipeline that would then pull the repository. It would create a container, a fresh instance of a new operating system. It would load it onto that container. It would load Node, the Mocha Chai, which I mentioned is the testing framework, and it would then, after all of that, run the tests that were part of the GitHub repository. Now those test results would be sent over, and that is a hook that we're adding. I'm creating all of this pipeline and all of this wiring. But at the very end, it would send a test hook with the results over to a machine that I have in DigitalOcean, and that would catch the results. That's simply a Node.js server. And once it pulled down those results, it would push them over into a MongoDB database. So I'm going to go ahead and show you that cycle. And I'm going to go ahead and start here by creating a push. I've already made a change to that repository, the Mocha Chai Basics repository that I showed you. And that's my local environment here on the left-hand terminal window. Over on the right-hand terminal here, I have that machine. I'm connecting to DigitalOcean there, and you can see that I'm running a Node server. It says running on port 3000. So if all goes well, at the end of all of this, we should see a JSON file that was posted. I'm simply writing here to the console so we can see it in that last step before it gets posted over to the Mongo database, which is a separate machine on its own. So I'm going to go ahead and enter that command here on the left hand side. I'm going to make the push onto the repository. You can see that that's gone through. If we go to our repository here, the post hasn't been done yet, but let me go ahead and move to Travis CI, which is in that same browser window. And we should see here in a second a new build start to take place. We're right now on build 49, and so if that went well, if the hook is in place, we should be able to see the build. And there it goes. You can see there that the hook has been sent from GitHub. There's a repository has started to be built, and if we scroll down here, we can see what's taking place. You can see the steps. There are a few environment variables being created. I defined that. There's also the environment that I specified, which is Node. And then there's some additional scripts that I'm running. You can see here that I am concatenating test results and environment variables into a JSON file. I then make some postings, and I'm also I'm also posting, I didn't mention that, to my Amazon account because I want to get some debugging going on, and that's an easy way to do it. This is an Amazon S3 account. And so that ran all the way into the end. Now if we go back onto our terminal, you can see there that that JSON file did arrive, and you can see all of that data there about the repository. You can also see the test results. This is the test result that I defined in that file that I showed you. And now, if everything went well, that should have been posted to the database, to the Mongo database. So let me go ahead and open that up. And as you can see here, I have a database. This is also a remote machine running on DigitalOcean, and I'm connecting to it through this tool. I've gone ahead and closed that because at times it caches. I'm going to go ahead and open it up again. Open collection, and yes, we can see there our document. Now, because this is a Mongo database, it can save JSON files, and you can see that we have access to the full richness of that structure. You can see here the tasks, I can see all of the details, and so we have a very rich capture of everything that the student did. So I'm pretty excited about this. There's a lot of moving parts. There were a lot of challenges and things that needed to be overcome. As you can imagine, there's still a step or two that isn't exactly smooth. But I think we have enough there to start testing in class. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up and say goodbye.